So in this video today, we're going to be going over the studs and duds from the first preseason game of the 2024 season. Let's get going with it. And welcome back to another video here on the Washington Football Maniacs channel. I'm your host here, Greg Sykes, along with my co-host Brandon Scott. And this channel, of course, is dedicated to news and commentary for the Washington Commanders. If you're down with that, please make sure to consider at least subscribing to this channel. And also, when you do, hit that notification bell so you won't miss any other video releases. So, the first preseason game in the books. We did get to see Jayden Daniels. We did get to see a few of our starters yesterday. Certainly, there were a bunch who did not play, but overall, even though it was a loss, I don't really count wins and losses in preseason because they don't mean anything. Honestly, I think last year we won more preseason games than we lost, and look how that season went. So, but we look at individual performances and things like that, and overall, I think it was a pretty decent day. But there are certainly some duds that we'll talk about as well. But Brandon, we're going to start with our studs. And I think we'll probably wind up echoing each other on the studs. But who do you have on the studs and why?
Oh man, number one, Jayden Daniels. He continues to impress, man. I mean, this kid is coming to Washington, not only showing what he can do physically on the field, but just mentally, man. He has an old soul, man. People are trying to, solve certain questions out. And he's like, look, I haven't earned anything yet. He's definitely has a grown man mentality. But just the way he led that first drive, or the only drive for him for the day. But I mean, we rolled down the field. That 42-yard pass to De'Ami Brown, money. I mean, him calling that audible, him getting that touchdown with the fake handoff to Eckler, man, the kid can play. And he's shown not only what he can do on the field, but what he can do is just as far as the mental side of being a quarterback in the NFL. He's checking all the boxes. So he's definitely my stud. Like I said, very small sample size. Didn't expect him to play too much. But from what I saw, this kid's ready to play, man. He's ready to be the franchise quarterback in DC. Number two, real quick for me, would be Ben Sinnott, man. He was hard to take down. He's a dog. We need more dogs in DC. And this kid, man, I think not only the catch, but the fact that he was so hard to take down, he's the future tight end, in my opinion. He's the future tight end. Now, I do like John Bates. We'll see about him and other guys as far as the tight end room. But right now, he looks good. And echoing, looking at other draft picks in his class, if you hit with him as opposed to other guys too, again, this could be one of the better classes we've had in Washington in many years. So I think Benson, man, he was a sleeper. He's a guy that I was definitely looking at in the draft, and I think he's ready. He's ready to be the future tight end. Number three for studs, in my opinion, De'Ami Brown. I thought that De'Ami Brown, man, he's shown that he's fighting for his life in DC right now. If you look at, we both said in previous videos that, really, I think it's a lock who's going to start a receiver. Scary Terry, John Dotson, and looks like Luke McCaffrey. But who fills out number 4, number 5, and maybe number 6? You know what I mean? Depending on how many receivers you want to hold on to the roster at the 53-man moves. And right now, De'Ami Brown has shown why he should be in consideration. Because there's a lot of guys who are, could be the 4th or 5th or even 6th receiver on this team. Jameson, active in special teams. So De'Ami Brown is making a case why they should definitely take a look at him to be the 4th receiver, in my opinion, because he's shown that he can catch the deep ball. And that's always been his issue, drops and stuff like that. He's not a guy really you're going to ask to go do a slant, kind of like Deshaun Jackson when we had him in DC, where, Deshaun could go out there and catch the deep ball, but the slants were always an issue for him. De'Ami's a guy kind of echoing Deshaun Jackson. Go long, man. We got you. And I mean, his speed, I think we can definitely use his capabilities in Washington. So, yeah, that's who I'm rolling with. Like I said, there are definitely other studs. I mean, overall, really good game. Yeah, we lost, but it's preseason. I mean, you're not playing your starting guys the whole game. You right now it's evaluation time, so you're not playing for wins or losses. I feel like overall, first time out for Jayden Daniels, he looked good, and overall as a team, the performance wasn't bad. Definitely more positives than negatives. So yeah, that's who I'm rolling with, Rick.
Yeah, so certainly we echo each other with Jayden Daniels. I mean, honestly, in the last several years, you have a new quarterback starting, and it seems like their first drive as the Washington Commanders, just never that great. Even veterans that we signed, just seems like just things never really clicked. And then right away, you get Jayden Daniels who checks out of a play. And as what Dan Quinn said, it was kind of a Top Gun moment because it was one of those I'm going to ask for forgiveness rather than for permission. So he checks out of the play and then he throws a 40-plus yard bomb down to Diami Brown, who I agree with you. I think Diami Brown's more effective when you put him on those go routes and have him going deep as opposed to trying to do these little short crosser routes. But, Jayden Daniels seemed pretty calm and collected. Of course, played that option run to perfection. I mean, he just basically jogged into the end zone. So he did. I mean, he led them to a great first drive, and then of course, who I'm going to also say was a stud yesterday as well, helping Jayden Daniels out was Brian Robinson Jr. Ran really well yesterday. I mean, just took the ball and just there's no hesitation. I mean, he was like a missile through that defensive front and the linebackers and things like that. So I think as things progress, you're going to see Brian Robinson just continue to run like he's angry. And that's a great thing. And, obviously last year, I think we would have seen even more out of Brian Robinson if we would have ran the football a whole lot more. But, Eric Bieniemy, for some reason, did not want to run the football. And this year, we're going to see more run plays than pass plays. I mean, I think yesterday the Commanders had more run plays than pass plays. And so, Brian Robinson, I can't wait to, we were talking about it before this video. I can't wait for his 1-2 punch with him and Eckler and see how that they fare. But Robinson looked extremely good, especially behind an offensive line that didn't have some starters in there. Still a big question mark on that left tackle position. So it was great to see the offense moving the football. The third guy, kind of echoing you as well, Ben Sinnott or Ben Sinnott, however people seem to want to pronounce his last name. He looked really good yesterday. Now, keep in mind, we had our guy last year, draft pick that I thought looked really good in preseason, and then we never saw him hardly in the regular season at all. But Benson, I mean, he looked really good. I mean, he drug players for like another 10, 15 yards, it looked like, after the catch. So, I mean, he looked amazingly good. And you're going to need to have some outstanding tight ends to really make this offense work. And so if he's able to keep showing that, not only that, but if he can also show some abilities to block as well, then, I mean, who knows? He may have the opportunity to start or at least get a huge chunk of the playing time. So very proud of him. I mean, there was a lot more studs than duds. I'm thinking about Johnny Newton came in and had a sack yesterday. He was in the backfield quite a bit. I was kind of worried about him because, it felt like after we drafted him, all of a sudden he had an injury, and I'm like, oh no. But, I mean, he played yesterday, played really well. Hey, what about Tress Way making that tackle on the kickoff? So, I mean, so many studs out there yesterday. Overall, I was very happy with what I saw. But there are duds. There are definitely duds as well. So, Brandon, the duds that we have, kind of unfortunate in my opinion, because we feel like one of these guys should be figuring out in year 2. Don't know if he's going to do it or not. Still early to say, but who's your duds?
Oh man, let's go ahead and start out with the elephant in the room, right? Manuel Forbes. Right now it's preseason. Like I said, not expecting too much out of preseason, but looking at his body of work last year, his struggles. Yes, he did gain weight. That was a big plus for him. He's been very active as far as being an aggressive defensive back and being very active in tackling. So those are things that I have seen from Emmanuel Forbes that I like. But that one touchdown pass he gave up to Brownlee, man, and there's been moments outside of that where he just seemed kind of lost in the sauce at times. And it kind of scares you because, again, this is a first round pick. And I do like Emmanuel Forbes as a person, as a player. I thought he had potential. You can always go back to, did we expect him? I expected Christian Gonzalez. The ship is sailed on that. Obviously, he's here. But his ball hawk capability was one part of his game I did like coming out of Mississippi State. And now, last year the problem was him not being big enough, him not being very active in tackling. But now it's like, as far as coverage and instincts, there's times we've lost in sauce. So, yeah, you can say it's preseason, but, him being a second-year guy who's a first-round pick, you got to see some kind of progression. I mean, because if you're struggling against, the Brownlees in preseason, Lord have mercy, man, on him when he's going against, A.J. Brown, where you're going against these number one receivers. And like I said, we talked about it before, where cornerback is that position where we got to see something. Because right now, I don't believe we see a number one cornerback on this roster right now. Major Forrest, the jury is still out. Mike Davis, we'll see. Benjamin St. Juste, I think we've seen enough. He's not number one capability, in my opinion. So we'll see. Sanders still, in the slot looks good, but maybe they, see, what his capabilities are as a cornerback. Maybe he could be the future. We'll see. Number two, as far as my duds, Chris Rodriguez Jr. I believe that, with the playing time he got, he didn't get the most out of it. He kind of struggled. He didn't get very much yardage per carry. Looking at depth, I think he's going to be all right in the long run, but you still have to capitalize when given playing minutes. And like I said, just because you're a dud in this game doesn't mean you can't be a stud in the next. So I'm not tripping too much about Chris Rodriguez. I think he will figure it out because I think there's a lot of potential in him being good at depth for the running back room. Looking at number 3, Riley Patterson. I got to be honest with you, Greg. I don't think the starting kicker is on the roster right now. I mean, these two guys we got, they're not it. And we were talking about before the broadcast where there was a time where, 45 yards, maybe 40 yards, 50 yarders were they weren't automatic. Now you got guys out here knocking in 65 yarders, so you fully expect that from 50 yards in, there's a high chance you need to make it. And it's preseason. And I get it, it's still game action, but look, you don't have that many people in the crowd like you will on a regular season NFL game. It was nothing close. MetLife, you're probably going to have more than usual because MetLife in New York, but there wasn't that many people compared to what it's going to be like week 1 NFL regular season. So if they can't knock them in now, and I think we need to go out there. And I believe we are number 2 in the waiver wire order. So they're definitely going to be very active. Adam Peters is going to be very active in trying to find the starting kicker because I don't think he's on the roster right now because you have to hit those. Because they're like free throws in basketball. They're called free for a reason. I mean, you got to hit those, man. Field goals, again, if you want to stay close in close games, you have to hit these shots, man. You have to hit these field goals, man. So, yeah, Riley Patterson is definitely a dud to me. He's got to hit those type of shots, and the fact that he didn't in preseason is a little bit concerning. So I think we need to definitely be very active in trying to find our next kicker.
So for my duds, totally agree with you on Emmanuel Forbes. He just, he was getting burnt badly in the joint practice that they had a couple of days ago, and then during the game he gets burnt badly for a touchdown against a rookie quarterback who threw that pass on a dime. So that's very concerning. I do realize that a lot of fans will say, well, they're still trying to teach him how to be out in the island there, out in the corner. But I don't know. Again, kind of like what you said, he's a first round pick. Maybe he shouldn't have been picked in the first round, but he was. And so you've got to be able to produce and perform, and you got to look like you have improved from your rookie season so far. I mean, I don't know. I would say that Emmanuel Forbes needs to play as much of the preseason as you possibly can put him in there. Um, he needs the work. He really does. Our whole secondary, outside of the safeties, I am not impressed with our corners right now. So, and especially Emmanuel Forbes. So, yeah, I might be a little hard on him, but a lot of people are, and I think it's for good reason. So he's going to really have to turn it around, and maybe he will in the next game, but not been very impressed with him. Other things, I saw some bad missed tackles. One missed tackle that could have stopped the Jets and made it a fourth down play instead. It was a missed tackle, and then they got it inside the 20, probably close to the 10-yard line, which set up, I believe, a scoring attempt for them. So, you got to be able to make these tackles. You got to be able to make the solo tackles. And so they have really got to start cleaning this up. Again, I realize it's preseason, but you have the opportunity there. You're one-on-one. You got to be able to make those tackles. And I feel like that you really have to clean that stuff up for the regular season. And certainly the third thing, I agree with you, the kicking situation with Patterson. Nowadays, it's no excuse to miss any kicks inside the 50, 50 yards away. And it's easier for me to say than done, I realize. I probably can't even kick 110 yards myself, but, still, I mean, you got to, in today's NFL with these kickers, I mean, like you said, when they're in warm-ups, they're kicking these things consistently 60 yards and beyond. So, yes, the factor is you got people trying to block the kick and all that stuff, but you should be able to make these kicks. Back 20, 30 years ago, yeah, it was tough. Kickers were just not strong enough. I mean, you used to hear John Madden talk about, this is like Chip Miller. He used to talk about him where he said Chip Miller was one of the few kickers that actually lifted weights. And so what did that tell you? It told you that the kickers really, I mean, aside from just kicking the football, they didn't really try to strengthen themselves. And with all the modern technology with medicine and things like that, and a performance enhancing, nutrition, whatever, these kickers are a lot stronger. They're able to kick the ball a lot longer and more accuracy and things like that. So they have really improved their game over the last few decades. And so being able to almost be automatic, inside the 50, that's what you should be able to do. It's when you start looking at the ones that are 50 to 60, yeah, that's a little bit more of a tricky thing. But you're seeing kickers kicking those more consistently in the last few years. So if you don't have a good, consistent kicker, you're going to lose a lot of close football games. That could determine whether or not, if your team is a playoff team or not, or if they're sitting at home come January because of the field goal kicker. So I agree with you, Brandon. I think that they're going to look at somebody on the waiver wire, find somebody. Honestly, I know a lot of people complain about Joey Sly, but when you get down to it, Joey Sly, he would kick them when it really came down to it, he kicked some mighty good kicks. And was he the best? No. But I felt was a lot more dependable than what we have right now. So, honestly, if I had my chance to get him back, I'd bring him back. But obviously we do need somebody in there. So, but overall, looking at the preseason game yesterday, there really seemed to be a different feel to the team. The team really, to me, in my opinion, they seem like they were a little bit more ready to play. I mean, yeah, there were some missed tackles that I hated to see. It looked like the Jets were able to move the ball a lot more, but then again, we had a lot of starters who did not play at all yesterday, and so seeing the starters in there, you're going to see something different come week 1 of the season. At least by week 3 of the season, you're going to see a little bit more of what you expect from this defense. But overall, I mean, you can't be too down on the fact that Jayden Daniels really impressed, and I know he's only in there for one series, but the fact that he led the team to such a fantastic drive with not all of the offensive line starting, and made plays and just was able to top it off with touchdown. I mean, that just really gave him a lot of confidence. Everybody on Twitter is talking about, hey, this reminds me of somebody, RG3. And I'm like, he's going to be much better than RG3. You're going to look at RG3 and you're going to be like, you know what? That pales in comparison to what we have Jayden Daniels. So,
Yeah.
I feel like that. I don't know how much more we'll see of Jayden Daniels in the preseason. Maybe, honestly, maybe a couple of more drives. But I mean, if he if he echoes what he did yesterday, you're probably going to tuck him away and say, you know what, you're starting week 1. Let's not push it. So overall, I was very impressed. Um, I just feel like there is going to be a little bit more of a different feel, much more, you know, down to business. I think that Dan Quinn has a plan, and I think his players have bought into the plan.
Yeah.
And even if we do wind up only winning 7 games this year, which a lot of us, myself included, has predicted it's probably what's going to be. It's going to be quality play across the board. Even in games we lose, I don't think you're going to see games where this team gets totally outmatched. I
Yeah.
think you're going to see games where they play tough. Again, it could come down to a field goal that loses it for them, but overall, you're going to see a team that is ready this year.
I agree 100%, man. Like I said, this is a totally different team, totally different organization. I think that we finally have turned the corner from the Dan Snyder era. Like I said, new GM, new owner, new coaching staff. Dan Quinn and his coaching staff, they're going to have these guys ready to play. You have a different atmosphere now. There's some excitement. These guys are excited to start the season. They're excited about this new era. We finally got a franchise quarterback. So I think I'm with you. I think that's the one part that really, really resonates with me and has me excited is that there's an energy in the building you didn't see in past regimes. This coach staff, is going to get these guys ready to go. And like I said, I'm a big fan of Dan Quinn. I think it's tough to say that now, obviously because everybody had their own choice. But now everything's in hindsight, right? So now you look at it. I think the whole time he was probably the best option. I think that with his resume, going back to the Cowboys and to the Falcons, he's a guy. He's going to give this team an identity. And then when you add that to Cliff Kingsbury and what he can do as far as coordinating the offense, I think we're going to have an identity on both sides of the ball. And finally, this organization overall is going to have an identity, and you're going to definitely see a different team next year. So I'm excited, man. Like I said, I'm with you around 7 wins, but I think that we're well on the way back to residence as far as being, a competing team again. So I think that we're finally back on the road to that. So I'm excited. Like I said, we took an L, but look, I think that obviously there are a lot more studs than does, and I think that overall this was a good team game. So
Yeah, folks, there's a lot to be excited about with this team. So just, I mean, sit back and enjoy the ride, enjoy the journey. We've heard from guys like Joe Gibbs, who, Joe Gibbs, he's the ultimate homer. He has earned that right, and he feels that this team is going to be at their winning ways, just like it was during his first tenure. Feels like that there's a different atmosphere as well, and so he's excited about it. I'll just throw this out there: if anybody out there who watches this podcast happens to know how we can get in touch with Joe Gibbs, because just full disclosure, out of anybody that I would ever interview that's associated with this franchise, Joe Gibbs is my number one of all times. He's the reason why I became a Redskins fan, really, honestly. And so, if anybody happens to know any way that we can truthfully get in touch with Joe and have him to grace us on the podcast, just like we had Joe Theismann a few weeks ago, please, let us know. Get in touch with us because that would be somebody that I would love to be able to sit down and chat with. Just a man that I look up to and have looked up to him for decades. All of my life, honestly. So, anybody happens to know that, I'm just throwing that out there. But at any rate, Brandon, we're going to go ahead and cut this one loose. But, folks, let us know in the comments what you thought your studs and duds were. And what would you like to see more of in the second preseason game? Again, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to this channel. And I always say this as well after that, hit the notification bell because you're not always notified when we release videos. And we don't always release videos at the same exact time every day. So, I just try to do that to keep you guessing. But anyway, for myself and Brandon Scott, we hope you guys have a nice evening. We will see you in the next one.